My journey into Christianity has been a really rough ride. Um, it began in early days where I had this constant fear and obsession with hell because I um, peered into a book that was suggested by some people in the church group. In the community, they thought that hell is a real thing and that it should be avoided. There's a process where you get to obtain salvation, and it is through belief. Belief is called faith in their terms, and I think it's just one of those words that are very um, powdered and colorful, but really it just means that you're just part of a religious group. And it really shows because while I was in church, in the Protestant church, while I was in my school days in elementary, parts of high school, I thought that everyone was very self centered and they didn't really want to read the Bible at all. And it was kind of like a communist group where it was a really small liberal party within the church. Everyone's kind of just having fun and partying, eating chips and whatnot, and they weren't really attentive towards the Bible studies at all. It was just an afterthought that it's important and we're supposed to follow the authorities. In the end, it doesn't matter. It's just about having fun and being part of the group. So, being in this kind of environment, I thought to myself that I should um, do my own research and studying in the Bible. And so I became aware of um, this fundamentalist paradigm where it's kind of very different from the Protestant denomination that I grew up with. Added to that, there was conspiracy fact tied to a preacher by the name of Steven Anderson. Um, this is a very controversial topic indeed, so I won't get too deep into it. But basically, I went down the rabbit hole and thought that was really important for me to tell everyone about the conspiracy fact around the world where, a certain faction, a sect, the Sabbatean cult, if you would understand what I mean, is operating the central banking system and enslaving the world. They have the Georgia Guidestones, and you know, previously, all these conspiracy fact analysts, they've been discredited, but ever since, the attacks in the Middle East by a certain small nation, people are being more aware of the fact that evil is looming in an archetypal sense. So I brought this to a lot of my friend groups, and they denied my existence basically. So I would feel very belittled and tragically misunderstood in the end. People would just ghost me all of a sudden after all these years that I've been part of their groups and contributing. Well, that's part of my Christianity journey, but really what I want to talk about is how I transformed through this whole ordeal. So, I was also a swimmer um, in my early days in high school up until my grade 11 year. It took me 4 years to compete at a high level. So, usually it was like for the other people, they had their entire childhoods involved in the sport, and yet they would, if they are lucky, they would become part of the top 10 basically in the provincials, but it took me 4 years. I was kind of interested in this topic because 4 years is kind of like on the low end spectrum of training. So I thought to myself that maybe there's some kind of interesting aspect to swimming. In my final year in my swim club, I had this enlightening journey where I did breathing exercises while I was in the water. So it was like a kind of fire breathing. This is a term from Qigong. And so basically, you hold your breath, you take in a lot of air into your lungs, you hold it, and then suddenly you have a burst of exhale, and then you swiftly inhale a lot of air. That's the difference is you inhale and exhale more violently than usual, and this actually helped me a lot in swimming. I jumped from 28 seconds in 50-meter freestyle to 25 seconds flat. Previously, I timed myself, but it was subjective. It was on the 24 high off a dive. Well, this is kind of like my own personal subjective view, but this led me down into a path of energy work awareness. So a lot of people, they think that, oh, energy work, it's some kind of bogus new age thing, the new age sewage kind of concept. But it's, to me, it's kind of really practical, like an electrician's perspective, because first of all, it actually works. Second of all, I like to compare it to kind of like the underlying fabric of reality, where, first of all, in the past few hundred years ago, we discovered electricity, but really, now that we think of it, it's just kind of like uh, a field where the dynamics and the actual science is just not interpreted the correct way. There is an underlying fabric that is even more fundamental than electricity itself, and it's what the Chinese called qi, which is the universal yin and yang penetrating force of reality. So everything is basically composed of yin and yang particles, and to me, that sounds like the polar opposite for the atomic electrons and protons. But then again, T is something that's more fundamental than all these particles. Goes straight into um, the Tesla science framework, where ether is the field where everything is being held, and particles cannot be subdivided into smaller ones, because the underlying thing is the frequency and ether itself. It's a medium where all particles and things exist in. So, after being aware of these underlying and mostly complicated theories about ether and energy work, I combined this with my Christianity understanding and developed my new framework. And this one is coming from, the cultivators, from likes of Nathan Bryan and Damo Mitchell. And these guys exist on YouTube, and they teach a whole lot of material about Qigong and energy work in the Eastern sense. And it's very scientific, I can tell you that. Because back to swimming, in my final year, I want to elaborate more on this. So the breathing exercises gave me the insight that maybe it's not about muscles and about the fascia, the network within the body that conducts bioelectricity. Because I did an experiment with myself, and it was doing push-ups, right? So usually when you're really tired, you can't do more push-ups. And so I did an experiment in the water where I swim to my maximum tolerance. And then I came up to the dry land, did some push-ups. Turns out that I can still reach my max. So my muscles weren't really affected. It was the fascia system. And so I think there is a kind of what's the word? There's a kind of relevance towards energy work in general when it is applied to the swimming competitive swimming field. And so my understanding is that it's a very scientific field indeed. And so I read into the 道德经, which is a literature within the alchemy system. Well, some people think that it's kind of like a cultivation for yourself and not for body transformations, but it's actually both. It's alchemy masked in philosophical literature. So continuing on, I felt that there's like very important thing with 道德经 because it's like a continuation with what I went through with Christianity, and I want to understand why I felt this way, that I want to ascertain the truth, be more empathetic. And this provided a framework, and so I'm basically personally applying all these theories with my Qigong work, and so far it works really, really well. And coupled with a lot of my posts on YouTube where I talk about Carl Jung's theories, it works, it combines really well. For example, I have this thought that paradoxical decision making, which is like, for example, you're really torn between two decisions which have equally justified justified responses, where either one of them, if you take any of these directions, it will have a beneficial outcome. But there's also the drawback where either one of them, they're on the extremes, right? So you're trying to find a third category of action. This is called the tension of opposites, and through this, you're actually building charge, a meditative quality, and this helps with your field, helps with integrity and personal strength in the energetic sense. So this is also important because of the archetypal field that exists around all of us, and there's a hidden intent reservoir, which I call, which is the archetypal clutter that we experience within dreams. So this space is all about hidden intention. So Plato's representation is the Plato's elements, and so we're representing hidden intention with these elements, and these are the archetypes, and it forms like a hidden intention reservoir all around the field, the personal field. And so this is a very enlightening journey for me, and to say the least, I am very, very happy that I found a final path for my spiritual journey, and I'm willing to share my insights, and I'm happy to post stuff on my YouTube for that.